Hello and thank you for joining us for Haunted Ozarks. I'm your host, Nate Kuester, and happy Halloween to you. You know, around this time of year, we tend to have a fascination with death. We find ourselves here in a cemetery today. Half of all Americans believe in the existence of ghosts, and that's a telling statistic. Chances are, if you don't believe in ghosts, the person sitting next to you does. There's no shortage of stories to share that have a creepy variety to them here in the Ozarks region, and we looked into quite a few of them. Ranging from stories of an area known to locals as Ghost Holler to a historic home in the River Valley said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity, to what's been called the most haunted hotel in America, the 1886 Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs. Now, we conducted our own investigation of the Crescent over the last couple of years, and what we found is tough to explain.
We have a lot of haunted places in Arkansas,
and they're just tied to this spot, kind of like to look out after it.
I think the reason it's called the most haunted hotel in America is probably because we don't just have like one or two ghosts, but you have a lot.
We'll show you the results of our investigation a little later on in the show, but for now we begin our paranormal journey together. Where else? A couple cemeteries in Fayetteville. One of them is a place where some say the statues there show signs of life. The other, one of the first families of Fayetteville was laid to rest, but it's what's beyond that serene setting that has our focus, a place known to locals as Ghost Holler.
Well, that's a sunken grave. I mean, there's no question.
History is more than a passion for Will Watson. He served 2 terms on the Fayetteville Historic District Commission, and the ghosts of the past haunt him to this day, but in a good way.
Sure, do we want to go in there?
Yeah, let's do it.
We caught up with him at a local cemetery for the Walker family, one of the first families to settle in Fayetteville. It's here in this eastern part of the city where, beyond this final resting place for the Walkers and the Confederate cemetery just across the way, where local folklore has taken roots over the last century and then some.
Right over here. I mean, like if you're like, this is another fence, and there's, we can see an obelisk and we can see graves in here.
Way back in the woods and up the hillside from the cemeteries, the legend of Ghost Holler has grown and goes back to the early days of the area, back to the 1850s.
There's stories in this area about a settler couple that moved into northwest Arkansas from maybe down near Fort Smith, and they suffered a tragedy very quickly upon moving to northwest Arkansas. There was a campfire that sort of got out of control, and the wife was allegedly killed by this fire.
Though the woman lost her life, it said she still walks the woods and is heard from time to time.
She's one of the spirits that supposedly still haunts this area of Fayetteville.
Will says the historical evidence to back up the story is, frankly, a little lacking. However, he maintains this story has been passed down for generations, gaining more attention in the 1930s. It was even mentioned in a story in the local newspaper in the 1970s.
People just report hearing, strange sounds, whether it's galloping horses or the screams of this woman echoing down through the holler. So it's something that's just been around for a while.
We spoke with the landowner of the area known as Ghost Holler, and the man, now in his 80s, was quick to share the stories of his youth that'll make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But he prefers to keep the exact location of the holler a mystery to the public for the sake of privacy and safety. But if the enigmatic locale is not what you're after, perhaps the Confederate cemetery has something to pique your interest.
There have been numerous stories about Civil War soldiers and, again, galloping horses and things like that. Even stories about statues that are in the Confederate cemetery coming alive.
Coming alive. Now that sounds like some Doctor Who stuff right there.
Whether those are true or not, is someone else's determination. But this has been an area where there's been a lot of activity reported.
No matter what you might believe, there's a strangeness you can find when walking the grave sites of some of the area's oldest residents and settlers.
This is not the most traditional, place for a cemetery, so who knows?
A healthy dose of skepticism is a good thing, especially when it comes to investigating paranormal events. Knowing where to look is also another great place to start, and one of those places is Eureka Springs. It's there that former Arkansas Governor Powell Clayton built a grand hotel where it said that some guests never check out.
Well, one of the great things about the Crescent Hotel is it's an attraction in itself.
The 1886 Crescent Hotel and Spa brings in thousands of guests every year, thanks in part to its Victorian elegance.
It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It offers a resort atmosphere. We are a mountaintop spa resort.
While Crescent Marketing and Communications Director Bill Ott is quick to point out the many services the hotel offers, it's something else that keeps the reservations coming after 130 years.
It being haunted attracts more people.
Rising from up above its perch at the highest point in the Ozarks here in northwest Arkansas, the Crescent Hotel is the crown jewel of the Eureka Springs community. And one thing's for certain, of all the people that we talk to, people seem to think there's something happening at the Crescent.
I hear people talk quite a bit, especially the visitors come to town, what they've seen, what they think they've seen, and it get quite a hoot out of it sometimes.
The lights flickering. I've heard people say that their TV shut on and off. There's been people who have said that they've felt something sit down beside them on the bed.
Believers and skeptics alike flock to the old hotel because of what they've heard, like Room 218's resident poltergeist named Michael, a young Irish stonemason who fell to his death during the construction of the hotel. Or photographs and video of orbs that some believe to be proof of spirits. Or even of Norman Baker, the charlatan who operated the Crescent as a cancer hospital during the Great Depression era and swindled a fortune from the hundreds who believed his false claims he could cure them. And of all the creepy things you'll hear on the popular ghost tour,
we've got spa rooms to this day that used to be old autopsy rooms.
It's Baker's exploits that stand out. From the sweeping views of the Christ of the Ozarks, the mountain forest canopy seen from the hotel's 4th floor, we traveled down into the bowels of the Crescent to the basement for an entirely eerie discovery.
Not many hotels that I know of have a morgue, but we have one.
Ott informs us this very table is the same one Baker used to perform his experiments and autopsies on the poor souls who trusted he could indeed help them.
Of all the places in the hotel where people have experiences, they kind of feel like it happens right down here.
Guests check into the hotel because of the folklore, but as Ott tells us, when their stay comes to an end, they become a part of the tale, adding their own story.
Is most of the time when they're checking out, they'll tell the front desk clerk, you know, I don't want to say anything, but this happened last night.
A little later, we'll show you the results of our own investigation that we conducted with equipment that we purchased ourselves to make sure it was legit. But we looked elsewhere in the region as well, and that took us to Fort Smith to the Clayton House.
What did I just see?
Built in the 1850s in Fort Smith's Belgrove district, the Clayton House offers a great deal of old world charm mixed with the macabre. Clayton House Registrar Sarah Pear was willing to share a number of hair-raising stories about what resides in the old home that's now a museum.
I will admit, I don't like going upstairs at night when I'm here alone. I always get those lights shut off before everyone leaves.
The Clayton House's past provides some clues as to why it's said to be haunted. More than a century and a half ago, William Sutton, a slave owner, abandoned the property while on the run from the consequences of his role as a Confederate sympathizer.
When the Union Army moved in 1863, this house was confiscated and used as a Union hospital. So we know there were some deaths because of disease and illness from that.
Locations where death is prominent can become hotbeds of paranormal activity. 3 spirits are said to haunt the historic home that's on the National Register of Historic Places. One of them has quite the reputation for his irritability and wearing a military-style coat.
We call him our angry man in black since it is a dark coat. He has been caught on EVP swearing, and he's also been heard to stomp around, so that's really kind of why he's called the angry man.
Besides the hot-tempered specter, the Clayton House is home to a couple of other ghosts. One of them is of the 4-footed variety, and the other, an older woman in brown.
She's just kind of been seen in windows and areas like that, and we have a gray cat.
Sarah hasn't just heard the stories. She's had an encounter of her own. It was about a year ago when she was talking to someone outside the house after she closed it up for the evening.
I looked up and there was a woman with an older hairstyle just kind of looking down and watching us, and whenever I looked up, it's like she saw me looking at her and then either stepped back or faded away. It was a little weird.
Though she admits to feeling a bit odd about her own experience, Sarah maintains she has a cordial relationship with whatever energies call the Clayton house home.
Regardless of what others say or do, because I know we have had like a past volunteer who refuses to pretty much come here because of something that happened. But I've never felt anything negative here in this house.
After the dark sets in and among these gravestones, there might be spirits around here. But on the University of Arkansas campus, there's an old residence hall where there's been many stories told over the years about an apparition that roams the hallways. The question is, are there any spirits actually there at the old structure that's been converted into an inn?
Carnal Hall was built in 1906.
The building, located on the corner of Arkansas Avenue and Maple Street on the University of Arkansas campus, is just one of many hotels that are said to be haunted in the natural state.
We have a lot of haunted places in Arkansas.
Shelley Stormo with the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program has looked into the history of this building that was once a women's dormitory.
It was named after Ella H. Carnal, who was an English professor at U of A. And she died of typhoid fever very suddenly in 1894. And so ever since then, there have been kind of ghost stories related to Carnal Hall.
The stories guests most often share include sightings of a floating woman dressed in a white gown without a head or even feet. Some also report hearing noises they can't explain, flickering lights, and photographs that show spooky reflections of what could be a ghost. Though none of the claims have been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, Stormo says the stories she shares keep interest in the old building alive.
We do this as part of the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program as a way to get kids interested in history.
Though the employees don't want to go on camera to talk about it, they were quick to share the experiences and stories they've encountered over the years. And whether the hauntings are true, Stormo and the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program will do their best to make sure places like Carnal Hall are here for future generations.
We lose old buildings every single day in this state. We're not just preserving wood and tile. What we're doing is we're preserving a story.
There's no shortage of spooky specters you might find here in our haunted Ozarks region. In fact, now we turn our attention to Cane Hill on Highway 45, where people say their cars have been pulled backwards, possibly by some spirits still left roaming the area where there's known to have been murders and also occupation during the American Civil War.
Cane Hill was once home to one of the first colleges in Arkansas.
There's a lot of interesting history in Cane Hill.
The town saw a tumultuous period of occupation during the Civil War, and when the soldiers left, they set fire to many of the buildings.
bad things happened during the war.
Decades before the Union came to town, though, the community was shocked by the brutal murder of William Carter Wright and 4 of his children.
It was about 1839, and it happened south of town, I believe in the area behind the mill. Mr. Wright was reputed to keep a large amount of money at his house, and some people broke in, killed Mr. Wright and several of the children.
Wright's wife and the other children escaped, and the Cane Hill Independent Regulating Company formed to find the killers.
There was really no law in the area at that time, and so they took it into their own hands.
3 men were arrested, and without an official trial, all 3 were hung. Ghosts and strange happenings have been reported along Highway 45, but David Ellis maintains it's all just bunk.
I'm very much a skeptic.
However, his neighbor, who lives on the old McClellan homestead where Wright's wife ran for help back in 1839, says her house is full of spirits.
There seems to be one that kind of takes care of things for us, like turns burners down in the kitchen if something's going to burn, opens cabinet doors, closes the wood stove door.
Anna Bailey's never had any trouble and believes her supernatural roommates are just another part of the charm of Cane Hill.
So many generations of the McClellan family lived and died here, and they're just tied to this spot, kind of like to look out after it.
After the supposed killers were caught, questions remained for years afterward whether or not they were the real killers. However, a Fayetteville attorney wrote a couple years later 2 men rode into town, one of them with the last name of Starr, a famous one among outlaws of the American West, claiming they were the real killers. We now take you back to Eureka Springs, where the Crescent Hotel stands tall. It's a place where many famous ghost hunters have looked for spirits themselves. We asked the management if they'd be willing to open it up for us, and they kindly agreed. And we brought our cameras into the 130-year-old hotel.
I think the reason it's called the most haunted hotel in America is probably because we don't just have like 1 or 2 ghosts, but you have a lot.
Taking management's word for it is one thing, but during our investigation, we met a woman who was quick to share her own paranormal experience. Ramona Capps says her mother was one of the hotel staffers in 1972.
All of a sudden it got really, really cold, and I could see my breath, and I'm loading up my arms with towels, and all of a sudden I saw something out of my peripheral vision, and I turned to look, and it was the nurse going down the hallway. And of course I ran, screaming up the stairs.
Multiple strange things happened during our stay. Nothing's proof positive of the paranormal, but it's all par for the course at the Crescent because of how often they happen. For example, we were in the hotel's morgue during an EVP and flashlight session.
Do you exist down here? Anything?
Now, no flashlights turned on, but the EMF activity was dynamic.
Oh, there's prove your existence. Meters are going.
Yeah, meters are going right there. Oh, to the red. Later, in room 419, known as Theodora's room, we had just wrapped up a flashlight and EVP session there. Watch the flashlights on the table. At the time, neither of us noticed it.
You want to give me shots of me walking down the hall or anything like that tonight?
Watch again, but more close up.
You want to give me shots of me walking down the hall or anything like that tonight?
It's worth noting the Crescent was built back in the 1880s and nothing's really perfectly level after years of settling. I got up at the moment the flashlights rolled, so it stands to reason my movement could have triggered the action. And on the topic of Theodora's room, her ghost is reportedly often seen looking for something.
She's most seen outside the room, standing just outside the door, fumbling through her purse, and people come up and say, "Can we help you?" And she says, "No, I'm just looking for my key." They'll walk away, turn back around, and she'll be gone.
That door she's seen at hasn't had a functioning door handle and lock for decades. She's also known to move people's belongings around.
We call her the clothes thrower because I mean, on a regular basis, people will come down and say, is there something weird at this hotel? I woke up in the morning and all my clothes out of the closet were just strewn throughout.
Theodora is documented as being a real woman that worked for the swindler Norman Baker during the Crescent's run as a bogus cancer hospital nearly a century ago. We conducted an EVP and flashlight session in her room with 2 flashlights designated as yes and no.
Is your name Theodora? Can you respond to that, please? I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Is your name Theodora? Yes. Okay.
After getting the yes light, we asked to confirm that the no flashlight worked as well.
Turn on that no flashlight, please. There we go. Great. Now it works.
Great job.
Excellent job. Thank you. Okay, so now we've established that both work. Can you go and turn off the no flashlight, please? Nice and bright, but now I'm going to go and turn off. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Can you turn off the no flashlight, please? Excellent.
As usual, the Crescent gave us plenty to chew on.
95% of the reports that come in can be explained by rational means, but there's maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5% of stories that you can't find an explanation for, and that's where it gets interesting.
Marketing and Communications Director Bill Ott tells us he's been told ghosts are often unaware they're dead, and that plays into the draw of the Crescent Hotel.
And they come back to where they either have unfinished business or that they enjoyed in life. And we like to think since 1886, hundreds of thousands of people have enjoyed it here, so that's why they come back. But we think they're drawn to the crescent moon.
Though our recent trip to the Crescent provided us with some interesting, if not unexplainable events, this wasn't our first time hunting for the supernatural and investigating the haunted nature of the hotel.
I've always wanted to believe it. I thought it was bunk.
Michael Wilfong brought his daughter Darren and nephew Sean from Oklahoma to stay in room 218, which is said to be haunted by a ghost named Michael. They opened their room up to photojournalist Joel Kattner and me to look for paranormal evidence.
If you want to see something and you're a non-believer, that something would happen here.
We broke out our tools, which consisted of 2 flashlights, a K2 EMF meter, a night vision camera, and a few other cameras to capture any paranormal activity we could find. We set up our equipment in their room and ours, but Michael's room proved to be a problem for us because of various, and we'll call them curious, equipment malfunctions we experienced during our investigation.
Batteries are dead. New batteries.
The night vision camera just wouldn't work in room 218. But it did in the governor's suite. In our room, we designated one flashlight to signify a yes and the other to signify a no response to the questions we asked. After talking to ourselves in the dark for a while, something happened.
Can you turn on one of those flashlights for us? Yes, and that is the yes flashlight. So thank you very much. That you can go in, that's very bright. You can turn that off now, please. So I'll count to 3 and you can turn that off. 1, 2, 3. We now have both on. That one turned off after I asked it. This one is now on.
This was just one of the many interactions we had throughout the night.
Can you turn that off for us, please? And also, if you feel so inclined, we have that green light in the middle. You can go to that and you can turn that up to the red by manipulating the electromagnetic fields there so that it will detect that your presence is here. Yes, you understand that. That's good.
After a little more conversation, we got the response we were looking for.
Turn on the yes flashlight again. That's that one, that's that silver one that's on the left side. If you understand that you could manipulate that green light, can you turn on the yes flashlight for us once again? Yes, you understand. That's very cool. Now you understand. There, it's going. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
After hours of exploring and attempting to communicate with the spirit world, we sat down to talk with the guests of room 218 to see if they were still as skeptical.
When them flashlights started flashing after a question was asked, it got me.
Even after we wrapped up our investigation, the creepy moments continued.
What do you think would make a place like the Crescent Hotel more haunted than, say, any other 130-year-old building?
That.
Now that was a wild night. Now we also want to let you know that the camera footage you saw of the night vision camera footage, also the flashlights, that was manipulated in no way. However, we had a lot of different problems that we've never experienced before. Those technical issues involved batteries draining very quickly, in fact. Also, some audio interference that we've never heard the likes of before. Now all of that certainly not proof positive that ghosts are in fact real. However, there's a lot of unexplainable things that makes us ask important questions, and we continue to do that. Now, keep in mind, if things feel out of the norm for you and perhaps you feel like you might not be alone, perhaps you're not alone. We had a great time making this. Hope you enjoyed watching it here on Facebook as much as we enjoyed making it for you. For photojournalist Joel Kattner and I, we're wishing you a happy Halloween.